Hello Year 11. This is just a video to outline your pattern of study for term 2. Obviously it is a little bit different this term, but we just wanted to make it clear what we're expecting and what you will be studying so that it is very clear and you know what you need to do. So this term in Year 11 Standard, we will be looking at close study of literature. So obviously this is the rubric from the syllabus, and it just goes through some of the key points that we need to follow when completing this module. Now this document will be placed on Edmodo, so I'm not going to go through it in more detail, but certainly that is something that will happen in our first lesson. It also lets you know what we are studying, and we are studying the poetry of Bruce Dorr, and we're looking at a number of his poems. Now, if we just go forward, I want to just clarify a couple of things in terms of workload. Now, you've been emailed by the school and we have these common terms. So things like essential, optional, and extension. And you need to become very familiar with what those words mean, because that will give you a clear expectation of what we want you to do in regards to work. So anything that is essential is classwork or assignments, and it must be completed. Okay? And that is the majority of the work. Then there is optional work, which students can choose to complete, and it enhances concepts. So obviously we are studying poetry, and in class we will be looking at the poems and all those kind of things, and then maybe some optional work that might be some further reading, some further contextual reading, looking more closely at some of the things that Bruce Dorr is writing about, and things along those lines. Then there is extension work, and students can choose to complete this work, and students achieving excellence should be doing these tasks as it encourages students to develop their knowledge and skills. So what this might mean is part of the extension work may be practice questions, it may be looking at the types of questions you might get in exams, it might be writing an essay, it might be doing a whole lot of different things in terms of that extension beyond what would be part of the essential workload. So just making it clear though that the optional and extension, whilst it is choose to complete, we want you to know that by doing some of those things, it will help you to have a deeper understanding of the content, a deeper understanding of the knowledge areas, particularly as it is a close study of text. So looking at more of the intricacies of language and things along those lines. The next point I want to address is Zoom. So some of our lessons will be conducted via Zoom, and those lessons will be conducted by class teachers. So your own individual class teacher will conduct the lesson for you, and the invites for those Zoom meetings will be posted on your Edmodo class page, and they will be posted with plenty of time for you to get yourselves organized and scheduled, and then we may move on to face-to-face classes, but I didn't want to put too much detail into those as all those details are kind of being developed as we go. The other thing I want to address with you is Edmodo. So you need to make sure that you are checking Edmodo daily, okay? It may not mean that there is work on there, but it just means that you're keeping on top in case there is other information that we are going to communicate with you. So you need to be going on and looking at the main page, and on the main page, so the Year 11 Standard 2020, all the work will be placed on there. And then any work that is to be submitted will be via your class page. The reason why that is occurring is then your class teacher is able to track the submission of work much more easily and also provide feedback in a more timely manner, okay? Keep in mind though that not every single piece of work is going to be submitted. Like the work we do in class, as a class teacher, we aren't there checking every single piece of work you do in every single lesson. So the work to be submitted isn't going to be everything, but it is going to be certain checkpoints along with your attendance at the Zoom meetings and things like that that we look at to make sure that you're just meeting the outcomes. And obviously, given the circumstances, we have to have some leniency along those things, which is why we are just making this very clear to you. So again, we're moving on to the scope and sequence. Now, in week 1, so this week, the first lesson will be looking a little bit at the introduction and context to the topic. So looking at the life of Bruce Dorr. Now, he recently passed away, so there have been a couple of good articles on his life, and we will be looking at those, making some predictions and judgments about his poetry and the themes that he is exploring, and that will make up the basis of that Zoom lesson and classwork you need to complete. On top of that, will be some revision on Education Perfect. So there'll be some revision over the first couple of weeks. So we'll spread that out over those weeks of language conventions, particularly poetic techniques. So there'll be some activities for you to go through so that you can spend some time revising your poetic technique and your knowledge of those things, so that when we're analysing the poems, we're not spending time going back and reminding you what they are. We will do that at a bare minimum, but we hope that you're coming to this with all your knowledge from 7 to 10 and this Education Perfect. Moving into weeks 2 to 6 is when we'll start to look at the poems specifically. So what will happen is on Monday, you'll be assigned a poem and there will be an explanation video to watch. And then that will lead into the Zoom lesson on Tuesday. Now, as we move forward, there are going to be face-to-face lessons, and so that Zoom lesson could become a face-to-face lesson. But basically, Monday you're getting some work to prepare for the lesson that will be coming up, whether that is face-to-face or Zoom. From that lesson on the Tuesday, then we'll move into some questions, looking at completing T-tables, so looking at technique, example, effect, because it's that analysis that you really need to get a handle on in order to write your effective analysis and extended responses. Then assistance will be provided via Edmodo. We will schedule in other Zoom meetings. As yet, we're trying to finalize that timetable, but there will be particular work, and that work will be due on the Monday. So you'll have an entire week surrounding that poem, completing questions, doing some deep analysis, writing some teal paragraphs, and then it will be specified to you what that submission will be. Moving into weeks 7 to 9, we'll start to look at essay writing. Now, as yet, the assessment is not finalized because we want to make sure that it is going to meet what we have done this term in the different circumstances. But essentially, in those final weeks leading up to when you do your assessment, we're going to be looking more closely at writing that essay, structuring the essay, all of the things that are important with writing the best essay that you can. But in the first instance, it's really making you understand that over the weeks, we'll be looking at one poem per week. There will be some information about that poem. You'll need to have read that poem by Tuesday to then flow on into the lessons following. So that is really all that we needed to cover today, and it's just a brief outline of what we'll be going through. More details we'll give to you as it is, but we look forward to teaching you in term 2, and see you then.